Hello, welcome to Alternatives for Exploit. This is Dr. Ayashola Ogundele. Small satellite ride share, an easy path to space by the small satellites. The focus points of my presentation are as follows: satellite rideshare payload, satellite piggyback, and satellite rideshare missions. Satellites, natural or artificial objects orbiting the Earth for specific purposes, have revolutionized many sectors in various ways and contributed immensely to the growth of space economy and world economy at large. The Earth's natural satellite, referred to as the Moon, helps to moderate how much the Earth wobbles in its axis, and this thereby make it livable. Artificial satellites, man-made objects launched into space, perform various purposes such as communications, Earth observation, weather forecasting, research, and a host of others. Small satellite rideshare, an easy path to space by the small satellites, is gaining high recognitions and attentions due to low cost of getting satellites to space for a variety of purposes. In order to meet the exponential growth of small satellite market, various proof of concept of small satellite rideshare and shared payload opportunities had been demonstrated and validated by the small satellite launch providers. Examples of some of the space companies providing small satellite rideshare opportunities are SpaceX, Rocket Lab, Spaceflight Incorporation, and Arianespace. SpaceX SmallSat Rideshare Program, a carpool program for several small satellites of different sizes and shape using its transporter, is helping universities and various companies' small satellites to hitch a ride to space with other spacecraft instead of buying a whole rocket at a higher price. This is helping to reduce the launch cost. For rideshare launches, SpaceX charges about $1.1 million for 200 kg to Sun synchronous orbit with additional mass at $5.5 thousand per kilogram. It also offers affordable rates, also available to mid-inclination, low Earth orbit, just synchronous transfer orbit. Rocket Lab offers dedicated and rideshare launch options, tailored orbit, schedule control and responsive launch. For its dedicated rideshare, Rocket Lab uses its Electron rocket launch vehicle, which can haul payloads of up to 661 pounds to orbit for each mission. Rocket Lab charges about $5 million per flight, but this cost is spread over the dozens of small satellites it can pack into each vehicle. Spaceflight Incorporation specializes in organizing rideshare space launches of secondary payloads. Spaceflight purchases excess capacity from commercial launch vehicles and resell it to several rideshare secondary payloads. It is developing a sharper system to enable more access to space for small spacecraft and hosted payloads, and to transport rideshare payloads to the Moon and Mars. The Arianespace Figure Launch System provides low-cost rideshare launch opportunities for light, scientific, and small satellites with mass ranging from 1 kg CubeSat to 400 kg mini size through a small spacecraft mission service. Satellite rideshare. A satellite rideshare, referred to as multiple satellite launch service, provides launch opportunities for small satellites ranging from CubeSats to microsats and minisats. This picture shows SpaceX Transporter 4 rideshare mission that deployed 40 spacecraft. Satellite rideshare launch offers less cost than launching the satellite individually. This is especially useful for small companies wanting to access the growing space industry. This picture shows ESO launch 30 satellites manifested on SpaceX's first dedicated SmallSat program launch. With satellite rideshare, it is easier for small aerospace companies to manufacture and launch small satellites. This picture shows ExoLaunch, the launch services provider, complex concept of small satellite cluster. Rideshare Payload. Rideshare Payload, also reversed to a secondary payload, is a smaller sized payload transported to orbit on a launch vehicle that is mostly paid for and with the date and time of launch and the orbital trajectory determined by the entity that contracts and pays for the primary launch. This picture shows artist's concept of spaceflight Sharper, an in-space tug designed to ferry a small satellite to a more precise orbit after it has been dropped off along with the primary payload by its launch vehicle. Secondary payload. The secondary payload attracts reduced transportation costs to the Earth's orbit. Reasons for the price reduction. The cost of transporting secondary payload to the orbit is cheaper due to acceptance of a trade-off of the loss of control once the contract is signed and the payload is delivered to the launch vehicle supplier for integration to the launch vehicle. This picture shows artist's view of Vega VV16 with SSMS. Having little or no control over the launch date or time, the final orbital parameters, or the ability to halt the launch and remove the payload should a payload failure occur during ground processing prior to launch, as the primary payload typically purchases all of these launch property rights via contract with the launch services provider. This is a typical example of the trade-off. This picture shows SpaceX small satellite rideshare. Satellite Piggyback. A piggyback payload launch makes use of the excessive launch capability of the rocket to launch small satellites. Small satellites are usually made by a private company or university. This picture shows piggyback on GONET missions. Payloads combination. Payload carriers allow small satellites lighter than 200 kilograms to ride piggyback on the launch of the main payload, efficiently combining payloads in the same mission. This picture shows an artist's impression of the 3 microsatellites being deployed in orbit around Earth. Piggyback of NASA smartphone satellites. In addition to launching its simulated spacecraft Mars into orbit on its maiden flight, Orbital Science Corporation's Antares rocket also launched NASA smartphone satellites Piggyback into orbit. The satellites built using smartphone and off-the-shelf consumer components in a standard CubeSat frame were piggybacked into orbit for very little cost. This picture shows high-altitude balloon test of PhoneSat-1. Satellite rideshare missions. There are a number of satellite rideshare missions, and some of them are highlighted as follows. The different small satellite rideshare missions are SpaceX rideshare missions, Rocket Lab rideshare missions, Spaceflight rideshare missions, and Aerospace rideshare missions. This picture shows concept of Vega satellite rideshare to space. SpaceX rideshare mission. SpaceX SmallSat rideshare program is an initiative designed to make it easier and cheaper for smaller satellite operators to reach space by letting them split the cost of regularly scheduled launches. This picture shows SpaceX Rideshare launch of 64 small satellites into orbit. Several smaller satellite operators cut the cost of reaching space by hitching a ride aboard a rocket, already launching a primary payload into orbit, with the operator of that primary payload paying the bulk of the launch fee. Primary payload operators. In a rideshare arrangement, the smaller company is building to the larger company's timeline. If for some reason the primary payload operator needs to delay the launch, the smaller company has no choice but to delay its own launch as well. This picture shows a stack of 143 small satellites aboard SpaceX Transporter-1 mission before encapsulation inside the Falcon 9 rocket payload strut. For the SmallSat rideshare program, SpaceX pre-schedule launches and gives smaller satellite operators opportunity to book spots on the rockets well in advance. The idea is that the launch will still move forward, even if one or more of the companies back out. This will prevent unexpected delays. This picture shows concept of small satellite rideshare for lunar SmallSat rideshare. SpaceX rideshare cost. For rideshare launches, SpaceX charges $1.1 million for 200 km to sun-synchronous orbit, with additional mass at $5.5 thousand dollars per kilogram. It also offers affordable rates, also available to mid-inclination, low Earth orbit, and geosynchronous transfer orbit. SpaceX sun-synchronous missions take place in approximately every 4 months. This picture shows artist illustration of spaceflight's free flyers and payloads on the Falcon 9 rocket second stage. SpaceX rideshare launch delay. If the rideshare payload is delayed, SpaceX applies 100% of monies paid towards the cost of rebooking on a future mission, subject to a 10% rebooking fee. This picture shows spaceflight industry's organized and dedicated satellites launched aboard a SpaceX rocket. Rocket Lab rideshare missions. This is another small satellite mission. Rocket Lab is an end-to-end space company. It delivers reliable launch services, complete spacecraft design and manufacturing, satellite components, flight software, and a host of others. This picture shows Rocket Lab's testing of its Electron rocket. The aim of Rocket Lab to support small satellite industry by providing frequent dedicated launch opportunities to customers' preferred orbits. Rocket Lab offers dedicated and rideshare options, tailored orbit, schedule control, and responsive launch. This picture shows Rocket Lab rideshare payload kick stage. Rocket Lab rideshare mission Electron launch vehicle. For its dedicated rideshare, Rocket Lab uses its Electron rocket launch vehicle, a two-stage rocket that stands 59 feet tall and which can haul payloads of up to 661 pounds to orbit for each mission. Rocket Lab charges $5 million per flight, but this cost is spread over the dozens of small satellites it can pack into each vehicle. This picture shows Rocket Lab Electron booster carrying satellites ahead of the Don't Stop Me Now mission. Spaceflight rideshare mission. Spaceflight Incorporation is an aerospace company that specializes in organizing rideshare space launches of secondary payloads. Spaceflight Services purchased excess capacity from commercial launch vehicles and resold it to a number of rideshare secondary payloads, along with providing integration and certification services. This picture shows spaceflight Shepard carrier capable of deploying scores of satellites. Integration to the launch vehicle. Through the integration of the secondary satellite as one distinct unit to the launch vehicle, Spaceflight Incorporation was able to provide a significant price discount to reach orbit compared to buying an entire launch vehicle. Launch payload sizes vary from 1 kg up to 300 kg microsatellites and use a variety of space launch vehicles, such as Antares, Neptune, Soyuz, and Vagon 9, as well as from the International Space Station. This picture shows Spaceflight's 64 satellite rideshare launch by a Vagon 9 rocket. Spaceflight Sherpa System. Spaceflight is in the process of developing a Sherpa system, a space dog that uses a custom ring as its primary structure and includes a propulsion system and other spacecraft subsystems to operate as both a hosted payload platform and an in-space maneuvering stage to reposition small and secondary spacecraft. Sherpa enables more access to space for small spacecraft and hosted payloads and will be able to transport rideshare payloads to the Moon and Mars. This picture shows rendering of Spaceflight's newest OTB Sherpa. Spaceflight is planning to launch next-gen Sherpa to deploy geojump payload in geostationary Earth orbit via intuitive machines learning launch. Spaceflight's cislunar rideshare mission, GeoPathfinder, is a secondary payload on board Intuitive Machines' South Pole mission. It will also execute rideshare deployments in translunar orbit, low lunar orbit, and beyond to geosynchronous equatorial orbit. This picture shows spaceflight concept of rideshare on board its next-gen Sherpa. Arianespace rideshare missions. Arianespace is planning a rideshare mission to the Moon in 2023 as an early step towards increasing involvement in lunar activity. The rideshare mission will be able to deliver 8,500 kilograms into a lunar transfer orbit. Orbiters and all landers will reach the Moon 3 days after liftoff. This picture shows Arianespace launching of 53 satellites. Arianespace Small Sat Rideshare Solution. The Vega Rideshare concept, named the Small Spacecraft Mission Service, provides Arianespace flight opportunities for nano and microsatellites, offering solutions perfectly suited to the flourishing subsegment of the launch services market. This picture shows Arianespace Small Spacecraft Mission Service Rideshare Dispenser. For the rideshare demonstration mission, the Vega launcher's 7 microsatellites were installed on the dispenser's upper portion, while the 46 smaller CubeSats were positioned on the lower portion's hexagon-shaped model. This picture shows Arianespace launch vehicle. Proof of concept. The Small Spacecraft Mission Service Proof of Concept was launched on September 2, 2020 with 53 satellites on board using Arianespace Vega rocket. This marked the first occasion of the launch's new service to address small satellite market. This picture shows Arianespace rideshare concept. For more information, contact Astronautics for Exploit. You've been watching and listening to Small Satellite Rideshare, an easy path to space by the small satellites, presented by Dr. Anyashola Ogundele. Thank you.